Hello and welcome to this presentation on what's new in Inventor 2025. My name is Byron. I'm a manufacturing applications here at Man & Machine, and I'll be taking you guys through the next half an hour or so and just showing you guys all of these new updates that Autodesk have provided for us in this latest version of Inventor. So you can see for this version we have over 142 customer-driven enhancements. And along with those enhancements, there's also been about 1,300 bug fixes that Autodesk have implemented for this latest version. They don't all come in 2025, so these are released staggered throughout the year. So Inventor 2024.1 had a bunch of enhancements. Again, later on in the year, we had 2024.2. But now these have all been packaged within the 2025 version. So we have a nice, stable, robust 2025 version with some really cool new features added to it as well. If you guys wanted to have your say on what features get added to the newer versions of Inventor, I would highly recommend going to specifically the Inventor Idea Station and upvoting the ideas you find there that could be really useful for your company. Or if you notice there's a feature lacking within Inventor and you think lots of people could use it, you could add your idea to that idea station, and then if it gets enough upvotes, Autodesk will look at that area, see what the community are requesting, and then add those to future considerations on what gets added to the latest versions of Inventor. So within this 2025 version, we have some really nice, cool new features and quite a lot of new features for a new version of Inventor. So for sheet metal, we have an updated user interface. So our flanges, our faces, and our cuts all have that new user interface that resemble the same kind of UI that the standard part environment has. So when you're looking for the settings to apply your flanges, for instance, you don't have to go searching through tabs. It's all under one nice panel. So it should be a lot quicker and a lot easier to create the flanges or the sheet metal components that you're looking to create. Then with part modeling, we have an update to the finish feature. The finish feature was actually only released in 2024. My colleague Cameron has actually made a really nice video detailing exactly what it's used for and how you would use it. I'll just be going over the latest additions they've added to that finish feature today. And then also within the part environment, we have some additions to the hole tool. So just to align with the ISO standards. And then a nice new feature we have within the patterning option is the ability to create boundaries so that your patterns only reside within a particular boundary and you don't have to manually go in and suppress all the patterns that you don't require within the part. Then within assembly modeling, we have the ability to create bounding cylinders. So if you have cylindrical components that you want to simplify, maybe for intellectual property reasons, or to just make it less heavy if you're exporting it out to a Revit family file, for instance, and it needs to be used in Revit, you now have the ability to create derived bounding cylinders rather than just the old square that we previously had. So it gives you a nice shape of the object without you giving up all of your IP. And then within assembly modeling, we also have the ability to change the colors of the model, which allows through quick sorting of some very large assemblies that maybe are thousands of components or iterations wide or high. You can sort through all of those and give each of those components a different color, which allows you to navigate through these assemblies much easier. And then we have a few more options available to us in the drawings. So annotating drawings, we have a whole lot more parameters and properties we can pull from now when annotating our drawings. And then for interoperability, we can now pull IFC models directly to Inventor. And we can either link those so it retains that associativity between our Inventor model and the standard IFC model. So if that standard IFC model updates, Inventor will know that it's been updated and push those new updates to our Inventor model. Or we can convert that IFC model to standard assembly and part files as well. And then Autodesk has been big on pushing performance. So for the last 8 years, they've made more and more improvements on how Inventor handles specifically very large assemblies. They've noticed customers getting or making larger and larger and more intricate assemblies. So there's been a big push to increase the performance of Inventor so that you can still manage these large assemblies without suffering some performance issues. So before I jump into Inventor, I'll just quickly mention this performance feedback recorder. Again, brand new for Inventor 2025. If you're struggling with particular workflows, you can enable this performance feedback recorder within your add-ins manager, and it essentially just creates a package that you can send to Autodesk, and then they can look at any potential issues that you could fix on your machine, or if it's something they need to send to their developers, they can send this package to their developers, which will help them resolve these issues in the future. So that's pretty much what we'll be covering in this session. So let's jump into that sheet metal part design that I mentioned, and have a look at these new panels or feature windows that are available to us now. I'll start by just drawing a standard face. Oh, didn't finish that sketch, so let's try that again. Grab my rectangle tool, orientate that correctly as well. It's 200, 500. Now when I click this face tool, you'll notice it's updated to that new user interface rather than the old standard sheet metal interface. And it just means that all of the settings and options I have are available to me in one place, and I don't have to go searching for them. Obviously for the face feature, pretty standard, but when I come to the flange feature, previously there was 4 different tabs you had to click through and find advanced features. Now it's all laid out in a logical order. So working from top to bottom, I can select the edges I want to create flanges on, maybe these 2 edges here, and then I can come in, specify the distance, the angle, and then also where the measurements are taken for these sheet metal components. They're all specified within this one panel. So again, I don't have to go searching for those options. You'll also notice there's this new flange edge set option. So similar to the way the fillet works in the standard part environment, you can create these edge sets. And what that allows me to do is within one flange feature, have different edge sets. Now I can't have different distances and angles within this one flange. Well, what I can do is, for instance, create an offset flange, a flange that is offset from both sides here. Maybe I'll just do 50 mils from the one end, and I can do 0 on the other end. So I have 3 different flanges. They have different widths, but when I press OK, they all sit within one flange feature, so that my feature tree or my model tree also doesn't get cluttered with loads of flanges. If I just open that up again, you'll notice I also have a little green option down here. So rather than pressing OK and restarting the flange option, I can just click Next or Add New, and then that allows me to add another flange into my sheet metal part. You should see we also have the ability to directly manipulate these flanges within the 3D canvas. So I don't need to come in and modify these dimensions here. I can just push and pull these arrows, and then I get immediate input on what that's going to look like directly within my 3D canvas. And then further down the line, I also have the options, my bend radius, and then my corner defaults. Obviously, there's no corner on this particular flange. But if I open up this flange over here, I have my corners here where I can specify a corner default, or if I wanted to override a particular corner, I could just select this option here, and then maybe just change that corner shape into maybe a circle, a round intersection. So now if I zoom in there, I've got a little round cut rather than the standard intersection that I had previously. It's just a standard tear. So just with this new interface, it should make your sheet metal modeling a lot quicker and a lot easier to create the sheet metal components that you're looking to create. So I'll jump into the standard part environment next, and we'll have a look at that rectangular feature that's been updated for us in Inventor 2025. Again, I'm going to draw my nice, very intricate square box or rectangular box. And let's make that 50 mils thick. And then I'm just going to place in a hole in the top left of this base here. So 20 mils from that edge, 20 mils from that edge. And you should notice that we have these new drill points available to us within Inventor 2025. And these just coincide with the latest ISO standards. Rather than just having flat or pointed, we have these W, V, and Y standards. You can see the W is flat, or I could go for the V that has that drill point. And again, those are just taken from the latest ISO standards. Press OK there. And obviously, if I had to come in and annotate this either in the 2D drawing environment or with 3D annotations, it has those updated standards pushed through to those properties as well. But what I really want to show off is this new rectangular, this pattern feature, where you can pattern entities within a particular boundary. I'm just going to draw a circle there and then project all the edges of this top face. And now when I come to pattern this hole, so that hole is what I want to pattern. I'll pattern it along that edge there. And for my second direction, let's do that edge there. Let's do a distance of 450, maybe 20 instances and 10 instances. And let's do 25. And rather than patterning outside of this face, if I grab my boundary option, I know my sketch is terrible, but I can select that face there. And then anything that's outside of this highlighted boundary is just going to be automatically suppressed for me. So now when I press OK here, you'll see it only creates these whole patterns within that particular boundary. A few more options we have within this boundary tool is rather than choosing to only add geometry that's fully enclosed within the boundary, I can choose to add geometry that falls within the centroid of whose centroid falls within the boundary. But obviously in that case, I'll have holes that are overlapping with the edge of my component. So I'll just keep it like that standard for now. Or I could add an offset to my sketch, and that will obviously just shrink the size of that boundary. So I'll add a 25 offset and then choose that centroid option, press OK, and then you'll see we only have those those holes placed within that offset sketch there. So just a nice, really useful tool that stops you from manually having to go and suppress the particular occurrences of the pattern that you don't want. The next feature I'd like to show you guys is this finish tool. So with this finish tool, you're able to apply appearance finishes to any surface or indeed any body within the part environment. but rather than just applying standard appearances, we can apply material coatings, a heat treatment if these surfaces require heat treatment, or apply paint or surface textures as well. So rather than selecting the whole body, I just want to grab that top face, and then I'm going to apply maybe a polished surface texture to this top face here. I'll select the process I want to apply, and then I can change the appearance. Let's see if we have some polished appearances here. Some brushed polished metal, and then I can add in a description or a short description, or I could turn some of these fields off so they aren't pulled through. So I don't need a description and a short description. I'll turn those two off and press OK. And then you'll see within my model tree, I now have this finishes folder with this finish added to my parts over there. And again, I can pull these properties and parameters into my drawing environment to let, I guess, the manufacturer know the type of material finishing that this component requires. A new addition to this finish tool is this eyedropper feature. So if I wanted to place this same finish on another face, rather than going through those same steps, I can just come and grab the eyedropper tool, select that finish that I want to copy, and then I'll just place it at the bottom of this component as well. And it's just going to grab all the properties from my initial selection and place them on the face that I've selected. I press OK there, and now I have these multiple finishes there. If you notice that you don't have this eyedropper option, you have this little menu in the top right of that finish properties window, and you'll just need to make sure that hide presets isn't turned on. And you also have the ability to open your finish library location. So this is just the XML that contains all of your finish data. I'll open this with a text editor. And here's where you would come and add in your own finishes as well. So if I wanted to add a different type of polishing, I'm going to be really lazy and just call this polishing version 2. Give that a save. Here's where you'd add those finishing operations, and then once you've saved that, closed it down and opened up Inventor again, I'll have to close down out of this and open it up. If I select this face here and go to, I think it was finishing, I have that polishing version 2, and obviously if I changed all the metadata within that XML file, it will pull through to this here, and then again I could reference that within my drawing file. So again, just a nice, really useful tool available to you, both within the part environment, or if I jump into a assembly, again I have this finish appearance option here, and I can apply these finishes directly within the assembly environment as well. So moving on to assemblies, the next thing I'll show you guys is that bounding cylinder option. If I just jump to this derived component here, I have a derived part, and essentially all I want to do is simplify an assembly. I'm just going to navigate to a heat exchanger assembly that I have as an example. And within this derived assembly option, you'll see we now have, as well as this bounding box, the ability to add a bounding cylinder. So again, if I wanted to simplify this and maybe just send the overall dimensions of this heat exchanger to a customer without sharing all the internal components, for instance, I could come in and simplify this. So the first thing I'll probably do is just get rid of all these bolted connections. So those don't need to come across. And then rather than keeping this standard geometry here, I could change it to, again, rather than having that bounded square or bounding square, I can have this bounding cylinder, which obviously gives me a much more realistic representation of this particular model. I'll do that to the main heads as well, and then probably just turn those internals off as well. These feet can stay square, and it looks like I just have the rear flange, and again I'll make that circular. So all of the components in red will just be removed from this derived component, and then the components in green will be changed to these bounding cylinders, and press OK there. And again, rather than having standard square shapes, I now have this nice cylindrical component. It gives me a nice representation of the overall dimensions of this component. And now I could essentially send it out as a Revit family file if it needed to go to Revit, or if I wanted to export it out as a step instead. I have just the shape of it without sending off all my IP as well. That's also available to you within the simplification or the simplify tool. If I just open up this heat exchanger assembly and jump into the simplify command, again, my ability to replace with envelopes doesn't just contain bounding boxes, it also contains bounding cylinders here as well. And I can choose to either do the top level assembly or each sub-assembly, or indeed each individual part, but that doesn't quite work for this heat exchanger, so I could probably leave it like that, and then convert that to a much more simplified component. But talking about exporting this model out as well, if I come back to my derived component, if I needed to send this out as a Revit family file within my BIM content feature within Inventor, it used to be the case that if you needed to export out to, say, Revit 2023, you would need to open up your model in Inventor 2023 and then export out to that same version. With 2025, you now have the ability to automatically export out to Inventor 2025 as well as 24 and 23. So it just gives you more flexibility, so you don't have to switch between Inventor versions and probably convert your Inventor files to step so that you can open them up in an older version of Inventor. You can do that all in Inventor 2025 if you need to export as far back as 2023 at least. And again, the same goes for exporting Revit files. So if I just open up this factory here, if I wanted to export this out as a Revit file, again, I have the ability to export it out as a 2025 Revit version, 24 Revit version, or 2023 Revit version. There's nice, useful tools available to me in order to do that. It looks like my Inventor has just frozen up with me selecting that, which is perfect timing. So let's give it a second to think there. Have a quick look at what Task Manager's saying. Might have overloaded it slightly over here. I'll just give it a second to think, or I think it might have crashed actually. Oh no, there we go. It's obviously needs to simplify, so this is probably the worst option I could choose for this very large model here. But yeah, so that's come alive again, and then now that I've selected Revit file over here, I can see I now have the ability to do 25, 24, or 23. If you see the install now brackets, it just needs that, means that Inventor 2025 needs that interoperability tool for that particular version of Revit. So if I click install now, it's going to download the installation files and install those installation files for me so that I can then export them out. But to save me destroying my machine, I'm just going to cancel out of there. And now would be a good time to have a look at the interoperability we have within the 2025 version of Inventor. Again, I mentioned we have the ability to import IFC files, native IFC files into Inventor. If I come into Place Imported CAD Files, I'm just going to navigate to my building. And you can see I can now select IFC files rather than just Inventor or maybe AutoCAD DWGs, and grab this IFC. And it's going to bring this import window where I can either choose to import it as a reference model. Again, it's going to retain that link. So if the IFC model updates down the line, Inventor is going to automatically pull those updates. Or I could convert the model completely. I could import it as a mesh, which is much more lightweight as opposed to not importing it as a mesh. And then I have a few options to import it as a multi-body part file or an assembly. And then I can choose to import the IFC properties as well as parameters and custom I properties. I'll quickly load this model up. If I didn't want to include everything from the IFC model in Inventor, once it's loaded, I could, for instance, come in and turn off that roof, and then that roof won't be loaded in. And do the windows, for instance. I could just come in and turn off particular elements by the particular class that the element resides in, or I could come into this select option and open up this IFC browser, and then maybe just turn off a particular level, for instance, or I could select an element within the 3D view. I'm going to navigate to the component within this model tree, and again I can turn that on or off just by selecting the component within the 3D view as well. But for this example, I'll keep everything turned on, press OK. And we can see that IFC model is completely loaded in as a reference I can use for check for any clashes or anything like that. Make sure everything fits correctly. And again, once I'm done with that, I can then export this out as a Revit file if I wanted to send all my information out to my collaborators or my colleagues. It's just taking a few seconds to load that up. As we can see, nearly done there. And I should see that building placed around, actually I need to place it in, don't I? But because these have been new, well, the project coordinates have been set up, if I place it grounded at the origin, you can see I have that building placed perfectly in alignment with my Inventor assembly. And I could probably come in and let's slice this. Do we have any representations? I'll create a section view of it. Well, I'll need to turn on that IFC model. And we can see I can also come in, if I change my selection priority to part priority here, I can come in and grab these IFC components and change the visibility so I can see directly within this assembly now. So just another really useful tool that allows you to collaborate much easier with external partners where people are using different software. IFC bridges that gap, so you can share data between different platforms quite easily now and everybody's working with the same source of information, and there's far less guesswork involved when multiple different parties are collaborating. Another really useful feature I mentioned within the assembly environment is, I'll switch back to this packing machine, and if I go back to my View tab, we have this new button called Display Separate Colors, and if I turn this on, you'll see each individual component here. If I click the drop down, a unique color is displayed for each unique part within this whole assembly. I could change it to be display separate colors for each unique top level part. So I can see I have 3 top level assemblies here. And it just makes sorting through or searching through this assembly much easier when I have this ability to change the colors of each component. So the options I have is for each unique top level assembly. For each top level assembly, again, nothing's going to change here because each of these are unique. Or I could have colors for each unique part. You can see all of these rollers are green. Or I could have separate colors for each individual part. Now each and every part has its own separate color within this assembly, just allowing me to search through it and make sense of it fairly easier compared to if it was all just grey, for instance. At least some appearances have been applied to this particular assembly. So again, a highly requested feature that Autodesk have added for Inventor 2025. The next thing I'll move on to is the drawing environment. So I should have a drawing here. And we have 1 or 2 new features here with regards to annotations. So if I wanted to maybe dimension this shaded view here, I'm going to grab maybe this this arc over here. I'll place that in there. It's quite visible, but if this was a color that made this dimension not very visible, you now have the ability to place a background behind that dimension. So if I just click this pencil icon here, I can format my text, and I have the ability to add a background fill just to make that dimension much more visible within a shaded view, or if this dimension wasn't very visible within your drawing, I can place that background dimension in there, and it's just much more visible. Let's see if we have any arcs over here. I just want to place a dimension on an arc. If I place this dimension down, you can see I have this arc extension line. If for whatever reason you didn't want that extension line, Autodesk now allows you to hide that extension line. If you just select the extension line, right click and say hide extension line, it just gets rid of that if you wanted to neaten up your drawings. So that's just another feature available to you in the drawing environment for 2025. And then I also mentioned when placing down annotations, if you wanted to pull certain parameters, you can see we now have, it looks like there's no finishing options. Yeah, so I have those finishing options now within the drawing environment. Any of those finish parameters I can now pull through. Maybe I want the area of the finish. I can place that into my drawing, and then I can also place in parts list properties as well, where maybe I wanted the description of item number 5 here, and select that, press OK, select that description property, place it in to my text field, and then I have, obviously this is a German design, but I have that description placed into my drawing that I can then use to annotate my drawings. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to show within what's new for Inventor 2025. There's loads of new features for this particular version of Inventor, and I'm pretty sure a lot of them are going to be really useful for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I guess have a nice rest of your afternoon. Thank you.